ladies and gents, welcome to CG Reaction. This is Otto von Bismarck, the Wildman Bismarck, Extra History Part 1 by the channel Extra Credits. Yeah, people have been asking me to react to Otto von Bismarck series from Extra Credits for a long time. I don't know, I put in watch later list and I guess I forgot for time, or other videos came in the way. But then I reacted World War I video from this channel. Video man sent it and other people also said, react to this, so I'm like, fine. So yeah, Otto von Bismarck is apparently a pretty smart, important figure, I guess. Before World War I, before Kaiser Wilhelm came, he was the the lead of Germany or whatever. So yeah, Otto von Bismarck became the greatest statesman of a generation, but he began as an intransigent and irresponsible youth. He coasted through college, got himself thrown out of an early political appointment. It caused havoc with his divisive opinion during a meeting of parliament. Yeah, okay. This is gonna be a fun video. I like Extra Credit channel. The way he basically creates and shapes his storytelling is just awesome. The cliffhangers and everything is fun. Remember, people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. Check out the reaction. There's a link in the description. Check out the cast wall playlists like Internet Historian, History, Overly Sarcastic Production, CGB Grey, Tier Zoo, and yeah. Let's do this one.
You cannot always tell the character of a man from the character of his youth. 1878, the Congress of Berlin. A graying man with a proud walrus mustache stands and says, "Europe today is a powder keg, and the leaders are like men smoking in an arsenal. A single spark will set off an explosion that will consume us all. Damn. I cannot tell you when that explosion will occur, but I can tell you where. Some damned foolish thing in the Balkans will set it off." 1897. A prince in the middle of his life goes to visit the man, the old man now. It is the last time the two will meet, for the younger, Wilhelm II, dismissed this old man years before. But as their visit concludes, the old man issues a warning. He says, "Your Majesty, so long as you have this present officer corps, you can do as you please. But when this is no longer the case, it will be very different for you." Then he says, "The crash will come 20 years after my departure if things go on like this." The old man will die in July of 1898. In November 1918, that prince, Wilhelm II, will abdicate the throne, having lost the backing of his army in the disaster that was the First World War. Bismarck's prediction was off by only 4 months.
What the hell, man? How smart was this guy? Because, obviously anybody would see this and they think this must be a coincidence. But again, he predicted that, there is instability in Europe, that somebody could set it off. Even predicted the area where it could have gone off or something like that. So which means this guy was so strategic. He saw the political spectrum of all places, how it's all going and where it's headed. He knew that in Serbia there is, people are opposing Austria and, all the Austria's oppression, and somebody might do something stupid that would cause this domino effect that did happen in World War. So he predicted all that. That is ridiculous, man. Imagine if this guy was alive and wasn't old like this and was alive during the World War I. I guess he could have made some, differences. I guess he could have prevented the war. Who the hell knows?
Such was the mind that would use Europe for a chessboard and redraw the map forever. But this was something that few could see in his youth. Otto's time in grade school was middling, and we know little of his early teenage years. But at 17, when he enters college, we begin to get a picture of the man. 6 feet of dashing, with a tousled mane of copper blonde hair, often seen walking not with a walking stick, but with a twisted staff of iron. He cut a dashing figure. Classes weren't really for him. He stopped going almost immediately, preferring Byron and Walter Scott as tutors to any other. He was quick with words and equally quick to a challenge. He got himself into more than 1 duel per month while he was at his first university, engaging in 26 contests of honor and being wounded only once. To his dying day, he would insist that he was only wounded because his opponent's rapier broke. He consumed monumental amounts of alcohol, discovered a profound, if not so profound, love of the Ferris.
So he basically read novels rather than reading the books from the schools and colleges and things like that. I mean, look, if you want to have a proper scientific and technological knowledge, I mean, it's better if you read in schools and college. But if you want to just get smart, know how world works and everything, reading novels and things are better, because our education system is not perfect. Let's just say, some might learn it, some might just avoid it because they don't understand lots of things. It just feels chaotic to them. So I guess, in lots of time people read books and novels and things outside of it, outside of what our education system gives us. That actually helps them even more.
Sex, and managed to rack up a small mountain of debts. Most intriguing of all, though, he got himself cast as a character named Otto von Bismarck when his roommate wrote a novel about their wild college life. By the way, this man, who was quite aptly named Motley, would soon become a historian of some note, and one of the diplomats who kept Europe from siding with the Confederacy in the American Civil War. Anyway, that
What? Even his roommate is important, damn.
wild college life of theirs eventually caught up to Otto, and he moved to Berlin both to attend law school and to dodge the consequences of his roguish ways. Still rooming with Motley, he never once went to class while in law school. But when graduation time drew near, he hired what is politely known as a crammer at the last minute, and managed to pass the exam to become a practitioner of law. And all the while, he read voraciously. Not only romantic poets, but also history, economics, and philosophy. Although not the heady abstractions of Hegel or Kant that were the rage at the time. By the time he left law school, he felt ready for a career in the diplomatic service. Unfortunately, the foreign minister did not hold a high opinion of the diplomatic abilities of Prussian nobility, and preferred to hire from without. So, rather than being assigned some glorious foreign posting, Bismarck was soon sent to Aachen, a territory taken from the French in the Napoleonic Wars, and he was given the job of figuring out how to better integrate it into Prussia. This task never really captured his interest. It was the English he was far more interested in, for Aachen had become a popular spa and vacation spot for the English gentry, and, more notably, their daughters. Unfortunately, he was soon canned after he overstayed a river trip with one of these daughters by 3 months. It took some significant family influence to get this self-designated leave quietly swept under the rug, and Otto was soon involuntarily volunteered for the army. But before even his
Okay, so he's like, I guess, Tony Stark at certain level. He just wants to party, just wants to have fun. If his interest is not, I guess, peaked somewhere else. But if, he finds something interesting, I guess he can put his effort into it. He loves reading and everything. But if he doesn't like something, obviously he's going to find distraction into things like partying and things like that.
year of mandatory service was done, his mother took ill and died. This tragedy finally made his path clear. His father had never been good at managing anything, and his mother had run their more unruly estates. With her passing, Otto would take over this duty. A gentleman farmer's life for him. He was completely unprepared for this task, but he did still have his secret weapon, the one expedient that had carried him through every challenge life dealt him: cramming. So as his military service wrapped up, he devoured books on agricultural science, estate management, and economics. He even managed to get himself into a soil chemistry.
Reading books after books without, I guess, phasing out and actually understanding is a real power. I mean, it's a really powerful tool if you can do that. If you can cram like that, it's a ridiculous powerful tool. I mean, in any sector, you can basically become, good enough at that, at least in very short time.
Course at a nearby agricultural institute. Armed with this knowledge, he set to his task with vigor. And so, even as the agricultural markets of Northern Europe collapsed around him, his estate grew in value, and his diligence was matched only by his eccentricity. He became known for unpredictable behavior, like marking his entrance into a neighbor's house by firing a pistol into their ceiling, or releasing foxes into people's drawing rooms. He earned the nickname the Wildman Bismarck from the locals, and, as always, from the local ladies as well. But this wild man treated his laborers well, much better than their ceilings and drawing rooms anyway, and he further devoted himself to his studies, diving deep into history, poetry, English politics, and even philosophy, though he did still have a preference for Spinoza over the German philosophers that were informing many of his more liberal colleagues' thoughts at the time. All of this, and perhaps age, began to refine him, to smooth out his roughest edges. And though country life weighed heavy on him, in many ways he was well suited for it. It looked as though the life of a country squire was to be his calling. Over time, he settled in, he made friends. He even married a woman who seemed wholly unsuited to him, a quiet, devout woman with no interest in politics or English poetry. But she made him quite happy. In fact, he adopted her religion, pietism, to marry her. And such is the strange character of Bismarck that he did so earnestly, or at least he adopted the parts of her faith which he earnestly found compelling.
Okay, only thing I can see in here is Otto von Bismarck, his mind is really, I guess, focused in any area. It's not specific anyway, it's just whatever he wants. And if he doesn't like something, I guess, he goes to, partying and things like that. But it doesn't matter what field it is, if he wants to do something, he really goes into it. I mean, he's really focused. So he wanted to manage his farm, so he's like, screw it, I'm gonna manage my farm. He just went all in into it. Not just that, adopted the life, even married there. That's a powerful thing to do, because people don't have that much patience. People don't have that much of attention span. So this is something.
But her father doubted that Otto was sincere in his conversion. This was the Wildman Bismarck, after all. But Bismarck had a plan. Bismarck always has a plan. He wrote his beloved's father a letter detailing his path to finding faith. And when the man still hesitated, Bismarck, being Bismarck, seized the moment, tore all the way across Pomerania in the middle of winter, and showed up at the man's estate to convince him in person. When Bismarck returned from this excursion, he found on his desk a letter. It was an invitation to take charge of running the dikes on the Elbe. It may not seem like much, but it was an official position. His time in the doghouse with the government might be over. So he attacked the work. Then, in 1847, something monumental happened. The King of Prussia called a parliament. For the first time, Prussians would get together, debate, and vote on things. But Otto's wedding date was near, and besides, he hated Berlin, and he was a staunch conservative, believing in the power of the monarchy at a time when liberalism and democracy were in vogue. Even the idea of a parliament grated against his royalist leanings, for though this was a summoned rather than an elected parliament, it was almost certainly going to be used to push for a proper elected parliament, one which, by its very nature, must take its power from the royal government. So he was reluctant to go. Even if he were to be summoned, he might not. But then fate turned. He received another letter. An acquaintance, whose good graces he wanted to stay in, had suddenly fallen ill, and now requested that Otto take up his post as representative of the Prussian Saxon nobility. This request made no sense, as technically Otto was not part of the Prussian Saxon nobility. His estates were all either in Altmark or Pomerania. But never mind that, he couldn't turn down such an important request. So he made his way to the United Diet, where a push for a true parliament was already in session. Pro-democratic speeches were given. One man got up and declared that the Prussian people had only thrown back Napoleon because they were promised a constitution. This was too much. Bismarck stood and responded that the Prussian people had thrown back Napoleon for Prussia. Did the man really think that Prussians wouldn't have stood up against an invader without being promised a piece of paper? The hall erupted in boos. People shouted and stamped. The place was chaos. But Bismarck, being Bismarck, just picked up a newspaper and began to leisurely read through it until they were quite done. And then he finished his speech. And in that moment, Bismarck the country squire became Bismarck the statesman.
Yeah, okay. He was conservative. He wanted monarchy rather than, democracy. I mean, you can't really blame him when you realize, how French Revolution everything went just, before this time, I guess. So maybe that thing was fresh in his mind, like how if there is no monarchy, how people go ballistic or something like that, because that might have become the, democracy image to him, the French Revolution. And all the guillotine and everything. So that's why he probably opposed it. But that's something, isn't it? I mean, he's true, isn't it? I mean, Prussians would have opposed Napoleon for Prussia. It's not because only they are given the choice of constitution. Otherwise, they wouldn't have rose up that stupid. I mean, he is true there. Damn. You can already see from the first video that, what his ambitions are, how he is, how his mind is. how focused he is, and his ability to cramp knowledge. That's just gonna spearhead him through. But seriously, that start of the video where he predicts World War One, that is just surreal. So by the end of this series, he's gonna be really, really smart, I guess. Alright, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, check out the reaction I did, there's a link in the description, check out the cast playlist, check out the end cards, and I'll see you next time.